Lore of the Old World, Ravening Hordes, Chapter 4, Beastmen Brayherds. The beasts of chaos are the true children of the dark gods. Grotesque hybrids of fierce animal and primitive human, these horned and stinking warrior beasts infest the blighted forests that cover the Old World. Their savage tribes explode from the depths of the haunted woods to wage bitter war against the civilized races, and so profound is the beastmen's hatred of order and reason that they seek to drag the world kicking and screaming into a barbaric and primal age. Beastmen are not natural creatures. They first came into existence when the polar gateway of the Old Ones collapsed, showering the world with corrupting warpstone. It worked a dreadful change on many of the ancestors of men, causing severe mutations. Hence, beastmen were created half man, half animal, wholly chaotic. The children of chaos, so they call themselves, are wild and brutish creatures that care little for other beings and despise the race of men above all else. In battle they combine ferocity with a savage lack of discipline, fighting and battling amongst themselves in their eagerness to get at the enemy. There are several types of beastmen, but they can be divided into two rough categories: Ungors, which are twisted creatures that combine the worst qualities of a man and a beast, and Gors, a gigantic breed of beastmen, a mix of some powerful animal and human. Beastmen willingly embrace their twisted heritage. They have the intelligence of a man, but employ it with the base cunning of a wild animal. These creatures are the most numerous of the beasts of chaos. Their numbers can only be guessed at, but many scholars fear they far outnumber mankind. They pose an unavoidable threat to travellers on forest roads and to small villages and farmsteads. Often homes or hamlets are raided in the night, their inhabitants slain, buildings burned down, and animals carried away to be consumed by the beastmen. The beastmen build no cities, for order and construction are anathema to them. They live instead in tribal warbands called warherds by the creatures themselves, each led by the strongest among them, a true champion of the ruinous powers. These warherds roam far and wide, following the scent of fresh meat. They infest the forests and the wastelands of the Old World and the other nations of mankind, being most numerous in the far north and the Drakwald forest, but also gathering in numbers in the lands of the south such as chivalrous Bretonia and bright Tilia, where the ancient forests harbour hidden beastmen camps. Eastwards to Cathay, and westwards across the great ocean beyond Nagaroth, beastmen have also made their lairs. Wherever men once roamed or still dwell, the beastmen can be found. Beastmen warherds are extremely dangerous in battle. A ferocious mass of brutish warriors and great lumbering chariots eager to tear apart any enemies that dare to stand in their way. Towering above the beastmen come bellowing minotaurs and dragon ogres, while feral centaurs lope through the woods around them. Often the horde breaks quickly into warring factions, for beastmen are children of chaos, and organization and order is a concept which is alien to them. Only the very strongest beast lords with a will of iron can hold together their hordes for long enough to pose a serious threat to men, elves, dwarfs, or orcs and goblins. But when this happens, the mortal lands are in dire peril. Rival beastmen warherds fight against each other all the time, be it over disputed territory, looted riches, or to gain the notice and earn the favour of the Chaos Gods. At other times, the beastmen of many warherds band together in strength, answering the call of a single chieftain to form a Bray herd. The calling of a Bray herd starts with a chieftain, guided by some potent or dream, building a massive pyre, visible for leagues around. From far and wide, rival warbands answer the summons, the chieftain of each stepping into the clearing and making their presence known. Once the warherds have gathered, the chieftain that called the Bray herd demands that all present submit to their will and follow them to war. Inevitably, others will challenge their caller's right to lead the Bray herd, and a series of ritual combats will ensue. When at last a single mighty champion remains, the assembled Bray shamans will announce that the matter is decided and declare the victor the Beast Lord. The instant the Beast Lord is acknowledged, the assembled beastmen erupt into a frenzy of action. Led by chanting, shrieking Bray shamans, the beastmen drag forth captives for sacrifice before the herdstones. The forest resounds with screams, such that men for leagues in every direction tremble within their hovels and pray to their gods. The scent of butchered flesh hangs heavy in the air, attracting minotaurs, and worse, to the herdstone. As dawn breaks from the shrouded tree line, the atonal droning of war horns sounds, accompanied by the dolorous, arrhythmic pounding of mighty drums made from the flayed skin of defeated foes. Soon massed figures emerge from the mists, and the horde becomes visible in all its terrible glory. The tactics employed by the Beastmen are not the practiced drills of many other races, but the inherent guile of a pack of wild animals stalking and encircling its prey. They sense weakness and smell fear, surging forward for the kill and falling upon their prey in an orgy of butchery. The coming of the horde is always presaged by cacophonous braying. As if to amplify their already deafening war cries, the Beastmen employ war horns fashioned from the horns of slain rivals, along with a bewildering array of banners daubed with crude runes. At the centre of the horde are heavily armoured elite bestigors. Equipped with huge axes, these beastmen hack into the enemy as farmers scythe down wheat. The bestigors will fight to the death to take the banners of their foe, trampling enemy standards into the mud as the bulk of their hordes come on in their bloody wake. All the while, Gors and Ungors stalk through the undergrowth to encircle the enemy, before springing horribly effective ambushes upon the flanks and rear of an opposing army. Alongside the war herd come the minotaurs, driven to extremes of violence by the scent of blood. Above the battlefield, ragged flops of harpies screech and squabble over the remains of the dead. Even larger creatures accompany the horde, terrifying cygors, rot-clad giants of the forests, and bloated, betentacle things that lurk within the wooded bogs and can swallow whole a dozen men in a single gulp. When the herds form up for battle, the sight strikes terror into even the bravest warriors, for such a menagerie of horrors can consume all before it. Beastlords and wargors are the leaders of the warherds, but they care not how their underlings are fed or how disputes are settled. The only thing that concerns them is battle. They are hairy, muscle-bound brutes, possessed of a war and savage might that carry themselves with swaggering confidence, revelling in their own superiority over lesser beasts. Their thick, hairy skulls are crowned with magnificent sets of horns as sharp and hard as any blade, and their robust and heavily thewed bodies are covered with scar tissue and crudely rendered tattoos. The threat of violence is implicit in their every gesture. Upon the battlefield, a beastlord is a force of untold destruction, gouging and butchering with horn, blade, and claw. The shamans of the Beastmen race are vile to behold, their filthy bodies covered in matted fur, into which all manner of crude fetishes and grim charms are woven. Their twisted features are often covered in a ragged hood, and their bare, heavy braestaffs as both brutal weapons and a symbol of their position in the warherd. Bray shamans occupy a unique niche in the brutal and bitter world of the Beastmen. They have no need to defend themselves from other members of their tribe, for none would dare assault them. Not even the mightiest beastlord would harm a Bray shaman, for they speak the will of the dark gods, and those that defy the gods pay the highest price of all. When Morsleep, the Chaos Moon, hangs full in the sky, the doom bulls roar out a bellowing call that resounds around the forest for many miles, attracting yet more minotaurs and invoking the blood-greed that runs through all of their kind. Soon the forest will echo to the thunder of gargantuan hooves, and minotaurs gather by the hundreds at the herdstone, pawing the ground in their haste to trample and crush. It is not only minotaurs who heed the call, others are overcome by the primal urge to fight and feed. As bands of minotaurs crash through the trees towards the settlements and fortifications of civilized races, so groups of Gors, Ungors, and other far worse things follow in their wake. Merged together in ages past by the warping power of chaos, Centaurs are a disturbing cross between four-legged creatures such as horses and oxen, and bipedal beastmen. Centaur herds are led by chieftains known as warhoofs, Strong, vital and crude, these muscle-bound brutes possess a raw and savage might. They carry themselves with swaggering confidence, reveling in their own superior over lesser beasts. When the warherds are summoned, it is not uncommon for centaurs to heed the call along with the beastmen. While beastmen, chieftains and their shamans observe the rituals of the warherd, the warhoofs strut and swagger about with vulgar bravado, swilling looted wine by the skinful and making outrageous boasts about their own prowess. The strongest and most vicious of beastmen are known as bestigors. Because of their size and ferocity, bestigors carve out a privileged position within the warherd. They form the chieftain's inner circle of retainers, constantly enforcing their superiority upon the Gors and Ungors with random acts of excessive violence. Bestigors typically carry massive axes and wear solid heavy plates of armour and chainmail adorned with all manner of grisly trophies, taken from those that have put up a fight before being cut into pieces. Because bestigors have the pick of the arms and armour laid before the herdstone, it is not unheard for a band of bestigors to look almost like a coherent force upon the battlefield. Gors form the great mass of the warherds. Their appearance varies, but the base form of the beastmen is a head and legs of a goat and the upper torso of a man, albeit a particularly hairy and malodorous one. They have the savage fangs of wolves with which to tear great chunks of flesh from their foes, and muscular and robust, if flea-ridden, bodies well suited to acting out their primal urges. One thing all true beastmen have in common is their horns, without which they cannot be considered real Gors. A beastman who possesses a fine set of horns is said to be a true horn or true Gor, and it is these who are the strongest and most intelligent of all Gors. Ungors are smaller than other beastmen, and their horns, if they have any, are less impressive. While Gors may have long and spectacular horns, Ungors usually have short prongs or horn buds sprouting from their skulls. Because of this, Ungors are not considered to be proper beastmen by the Gors. Ungors take to the field of battle in large herds, arming themselves with stout spears with which to impale their prey, and carrying crude shields to protect their grotesque, pot-bellied bodies. Harpies are particularly loathsome winged creatures with a body that is a parody of the human form. They follow the warherds as scavengers, and are drawn to battle to prey upon the injured and the dying. Minotaurs are massive bull-headed monstrosities that constantly hunger for hot blood and red meat. Often growing to twice the height of a man, and far greater in muscular bulk, their thick-skulled heads are broad and ugly, and their horns can eviscerate with a single thrust. To a Minotaur, the battle is a place of maddening excess. The scent of gore drives them wild, and they bellow their hunger for all to hear. They charge with a thundering impact, horns lowered to impale, striking blow after blow against the enemy. Once their victims lie slain, the Minotaurs slake their thirst by tearing greedily at raw flesh and gulping down great hunks of steaming meat, even whilst the battle rages on around them. Strong of limb and fleet of foot, centaurs are powerful creatures. However, they are not especially agile, and while they have great strength, they lack the dexterity to manipulate objects with any skill or control. Centaurs are bitter and spiteful, resenting their awkward nature, and harbour a deep jealousy of creatures whose minds and bodies are better matched. Centaurs live on the northern and eastern edges of the forests of the Old World, where the trees reluctantly yield to the sparse grasslands of the northern wastes. They are nomadic, without settlements or even encampments of any kind. Often they will join the warherd of a beastman chieftain, for the rewards of violence and plunder from such an allegiance are great. When forks of lightning sunder the night sky, and the roar of thunder booms through the peaks, the elders of the north whisper that the dragon ogres are waking. They tell their superstitious kin of enormous scaled monsters that duel upon the crests of the world's edge mountains, their prize an eternity of warfare. These are the dragon ogres, and they are said to be amongst the oldest of all living things. Their incredible longevity of the dragon ogres is the work of the gods of chaos. Aeons ago the elders of their race made a pact with the ruinous powers, embracing eternal life and damnation in order to save themselves from a slow decline towards extinction. In the darkest forests, massive twisted hounds hunt their prey. They often stalk around encampments, searching for scraps and lone creatures to attack. When the beastmen muster for an attack, these hounds lope alongside them, drawn by the promise of fresh meat. Some beastmen rear these vicious hounds, training them for battle. They can never truly be tamed. Razorgores are massively mutated mountains of muscle, covered in spines, tusks, and coarse hair. They are voracious omnivores, but prefer a diet of fresh meat. So great is their appetite, and so fearsome their jaws, that they are able to gobble down both a knight in full plate mail and their barded horse in a matter of seconds. The chariots of the beastmen are ramshackle constructions, built from heavy pieces of lumber, scavenged from the ruins of man's buildings. They are roughly nailed together with huge spikes. Even the largest chariot shows no sign of craftsmanship or finesse. This matters little, however, because the brute strength and ferocity of the evil-tempered beasts that draw these chariots, pugnacious and stubborn tuskgores and hideously mutated razorgores, far outmatches that of mere horses, and the sheer weight of the chariot is enough to inflict terrible damage in its own right. Should the chariot shatter at the point of impact, the crew care little, for they will have ridden down great swathes of the enemy in the process. When great storms roll across the world, the dragon ogre Shaggoths that slumber beneath the mountains stir. Their dreaming minds hear, echoed in the thunder, the roar of the Chaos Gods calling them to battle. As lightning splits the skies, they scale cliff and glacier with iron-hard claws, hacking at each other with ancient axes and battling to reach the highest peaks. They do this in order to bathe in lightning, rejoicing in the raw forces of nature, for it is the storm that invigorates them and fills them with deadly energy for the coming battle. Shaggoths are the same creatures that bartered once with the Chaos Gods, beings that bargained with divinity, and not only survived, but won their immortality. Jabberslythes are amongst the most foul of all the creatures of the deep forest. They are truly repugnant to look upon, having such grotesque and twisted features that even the clearest pools of water will not offer up their full reflection. A sickening fusion of toad, sludge drake, and many-limbed insect, the Jabberslythe will encompass all that is unwholesome and vile about nature, and magnifies it 100-fold. Ungainly and clumsy creatures, Jabberslythes have mutated the better to catch prey, but the most horrendous of all their weapons is their vile appearance. There is something so unearthly and unsettling about these beasts that to even set eyes upon one is to go immediately and permanently insane. The cockatrice is not a bold fighter and prefers to lurk in wait for easy prey. Yet, despite this inclination for self-preservation, only a very foolish warrior would confront a cockatrice. When the beast is threatened, it goes quickly berserk, shrieking and clawing at all who approach it with a maddening ferocity that more than compensates for innate cowardice. Despite its lack of courage, the cockatrice possesses a curious ability that makes it the equal of even the mightiest dragon. The cockatrice can petrify foes with its magical gaze, turning them to stone with a glance. This makes the cockatrice a deadly opponent, for a warrior must try to vanquish the beast without ever setting eyes upon it. Cygors are huge malformed giants, similar in form to minotaurs, yet each possessed of but a single eye in the centre of its forehead. Through this eye the Cygor is cursed to see not the material realm that mortals perceive, but the ever-shifting winds of magic as they blow through the world. Cygors roam the forests of the Old World, smashing through trees they cannot see, and laying waste to anything in their path. They hunger eternally, for they can scarce perceive mundane prey, and are only able to detect those possessed of magical powers, who blaze with searing light. These gigantic eldritch predators constantly hunt mages, warlocks, and witches, desperate to consume their flesh and thereby ingest the bright souls within. Giants are monstrous humanoids that dwell most often in the cold, rocky climes of the north. Those that live in the forests of the Old World are a particularly vile example of their breed. Their skin is often covered in green and brown mould, fungus and moss, while their long beards are matted and tangled with ivy and creepers. Giants do not make common cause with the warherds, rather they follow in their wake, joining in with the slaughter and slaking their hunger on cattle and their thirst on looted barrels of ale. Occasionally one might be bound to the will of a Bray shaman, and such a beast emerging from the trees is enough to fill superstitious soldiers with heart-stopping horror. Preferring the cold, rocky climes of the Troll country and Norska, giants are encountered far more frequently in the north than in other areas of the Old World. Although they will occasionally descend from lairs in the World's Edge or Middle Mountains to join bands of orcs or beastmen. Some giants, especially those who make their homes far to the north where Norska begins to give way to the Chaos Wastes, are warped still further by the power of chaos. The mutations caused by the influence of the dark powers are even more terrifying when displayed by such monstrous creatures, and giants moulded by chaos into even more fearsome shapes can turn the bravest warrior to flight. When the beastmen go to war, they are accompanied by sickening fiends that have grown to impossible dimensions on a diet of raw flesh and warping magic. The Gorgon is such a beast, a many-limbed, ox-headed slaughterer possessed of an urgent need to devour and destroy. During battle, a Gorgon wades into the enemy, grasping great gobbets of flesh to stuff into its maw. In its unsatiable lust for food, the Gorgon has been known to swallow victims whole, the entire body bolted down in a savage display of gluttonous delight. Smeared with gore and drooling slather, a Gorgon can regain new strength from its flesh feast. Yet, no matter how much a Gorgon devours, the hideous beast remains as ravenous as ever. Deep within the forests of the Old World, beastmen raise their herdstones. These monolithic rocks are sacred to their kind, and it is upon these that mighty beastmen chieftains record their deeds, their Bray shamans etching them into the rock in the foul runes of the Dark Tongue. Around these sacred stones, artifacts of power and trophies of war are piled high. Amongst the tattered and desecrated banners of the armies of men lie the remnants of powerful magic, weapons, and armor. When the Brayherds gather, these treasures are snatched up and claimed by the strongest of champions, who bind broken blades to sturdy wooden halves and hang precious amulets from their twisted horns. Thus are the treasures of civilization turned back against their foes.